this podcast, we will be looking at storytellers, stories, and the reasons that oral storytelling is important in our world today. You would think with all the technology we have available that stories do not have a place anymore, but they are needed more than ever. For in storytelling is where we find truth, we find reality, and we find the heart of what it is to be human. Welcome to the heart of storytelling. My name is Alyssa Curtain, and let's go on an adventure.
Welcome to this week's episode. If you're new to the podcast, my name is Alyssa Curtain, and I, in February 2024, went to England to go to Emerson College to do their flagship Storytelling Beyond Words course. And in the course, there were 24 of us, and I'm steadily working through most of my classmates. And this week is the very wonderful Phil Greenwood, who lives in Sussex in England. And I hope you enjoy his wisdom, and especially if you work in outdoor spaces. Phil's got a lot of experience in that space and how he uses story to bring connection to the land and to humans and to everything. So I hope you enjoy this interview with my classmate Phil. Welcome to this week's episode. This week I'm lucky to have my colleague from Emerson, Phil Greenwood, who is in Sussex. Hi Phil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me. Yes, delight to see your face and talk to you down in the southern hemisphere.
It's pretty good, isn't it? So tell me about your journey to storytelling and your experience with it.
Ooh, okay. Well, we could have to sort of go down a little whirlpool there. Quite a few years back. I think I really remember the first moment that I heard a storyteller was it was in Canada, British Columbia, on Vancouver Island, and I was on a course called the Canadian Outdoor Leadership Training Program, and we went for a weekend to spend some time with the coastal Salish people who, these people are famous for the art of raven and bear and these kind of animal supernatural creatures that they've made into mythological sort of stories. And this beautiful elder, very calm, relaxed energy around this old man. He sat us around in a big circle around a great big fire in this cedar longhouse, this sort of village longhouse, which was their community sort of gathering area. And around that fire was all salmon fillets being sort of slowly cooked on forked sticks for us for our supper. And I got to hear two really powerful stories, and they both have stayed with me. One was the story of Little Jumping Mouse, a very famous story about transformation, and another story was Half Boy, which was a story about coming to the sort of shadow part of ourselves and finding wholehearted unity inside ourselves. And I was a 27-year-old man, a little bit lost. And so I just lapped this stuff up. I just was like, wow, I'm really hungry for this. And the whole atmosphere, the whole embraceness of the sort of this place, the way it was told, the fire, the group energy, and it was all young adults, sort of late 20s, and this beautiful elder. That kind of left a mark in me somewhere of like hunger for and thirsty for more stories in my life. And I guess I sought them out and never imagined myself becoming a storyteller itself. Just I love to hear stories. And I, over time, ended up working a lot in nature and always found myself round fires and became an amazing fire maker and tender of fires and working with other young people. And many of those young people sort of not traumatized, but sort of a little bit lost, but finding their belonging in groups and nature and them becoming more comfortable with themselves through nature connection work and bushcraft, things like that. And then I started finding a place for stories. So that story's like, oh, now I'll have to really learn Little Jumping Mouse, and the story of Jumping Mouse is particularly a favourite still of mine in the way that it's like a quest. And and my one of my teachers, great teachers, have has said, when are you not on quest? So when is your life not in a transformative process? And are you just asleep? Are you not hearing the roaring in your ears? Which is ultimately a metaphor of like, what are you journeying towards? What are you being called to live? And I kept on dipping in and out of places like Emerson College, and where the International School of Storytelling existed. And I would go along to storytelling evenings there, and I met this fantastic storyteller called Roy, but I also met this other storyteller called Ashley Ramsden, who I learned about trickster storytelling and the storytelling of Nasruddin, of the Middle Eastern trickster. I love these kind of funny characters who kind of tripped over themselves, but had some deep, powerful learning entwined in their stories. And I went and did some short courses with both of them, the Begin It Now storytelling course, which is just a weekend, and then ended up on the craft of storytelling with Roy, which is a longer, and then a biographical. And the biographical storytelling, which was a few years ago now, was so moving and heart lifting that I was like, wow, I have a story to tell in my own story. I have this life journey that has felt like really challenging. And I've had many sort of moments of threshold and initiation through both trauma and sort of journeying into finding something more than what is in the physical sort of revealing of life, the survival story, so to speak, really led me to understand myself more. And in that understanding myself more has helped me to like, what does it mean to be me? And what is the all these things taught me, and how have they helped me to become a better version of myself? And the greatest potential of myself, what I like to call the North Star of my potential. And ultimately, it's helped me understand how to help others more. And now, so for years, I put off the 3 month sort of deep immersion storytelling. I just kept on putting it off for all of kind of like reasons. I don't have enough money, or I can't do it. I'm too busy. I've got too many responsibilities. You probably know some of those, and people will relate to that. Putting ourselves aside and to meet other people's needs is actually quite detrimental. And then I had this bit of a crisis that sort of went, no, Phil, go and do it. This is the time. It's now or never. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And I went, oh, sod it. I'm signing up. What at hell or high water. And it was amazing. And I met Alyssa right here as well, who I'm speaking to right now, but many others. And we all had threads of connection that were very human and very wholehearted, and we all had carried our little wounds of life. And storytelling helped me and what I saw and observed in others to become fuller, more of themselves, more a richer, denser, deeper person. And that is how I came to storytelling in a full way. And actually, how storytelling, I think, really meets the world to help us know ourselves, know our sense of place, our sense of belonging,
Hmm.
and ultimately, I would say our sense of purpose.
Lovely.
Well, that
So
was a whirlwind of stuff.
that was great. So what have you done much storytelling since the course?
I'm constantly trying to find ways to integrate storytelling, on particularly my work with youth and young adults. Anytime around a fire, I'm always winging out a story now. I haven't done like gone down so much performance route, just because I'm this summer, from the time I finished the storytelling course in May through to pretty much October, I am so full with work.
Mm.
And most of my work is with people, so I find ways to incorporate storytelling. Um, I'm just in conversation of opening up to helping others with storytelling. So that is a conversation that's unfolding. We should be more known over this winter, and yeah, I'd like to do more. But it's just, family responsibilities, work responsibilities, trying to find time and space. But I feel a burning to develop a localized sort of storytelling evening, similar to what we offered on the storytelling course,
Mm,
every Thursday night. I think it's just a really nice way to bring people together in a very easeful manner.
mm,
It's doable. Evenings for me are doable because, the families and work has been tended. I can just do my gift and see others in their gifts. So I'm planning on doing winter warmers like to warm your sort of story, warm yourself around the hearth of the storytelling fire.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. I mean, you really, I mean, imagine that your work really lends itself to fire telling rather than performance-based telling. And
Yeah.
how have you found that your telling around the fire now has shifted? Have you found anything's different?
The stories I tell are more uh what's the word? Crafted. There's more craft in the story. I've through facilitation of people for years now, I've naturally got adept at creating sort of quiet moments and a way of bringing up the energy. I'm more confident with group participation as well. So and yeah. So, but I really bring the senses alive for people in those moments and the elements particularly. And what I've loved is that in those moments, like something, if there's a moment of stillness and the wind suddenly will pick up, it's like something else enters the room. And that's the great thing about outdoor storytelling.
Mm.
Or like suddenly it'll pour down with rain and you'll be like, nobody can hear you. Luckily, we might be under a cover, but it's pouring down outside, and everybody's just like, "Whoa, this is intense." And it actually lends itself to atmosphere. So nature does what you try and bring in a room. But
Mm.
I actually love both. There's something about doing it in a room, in a group setting. So I do circle space as well. And I work with various sort of tools that help support inner health and well-being. And storytelling particularly lends itself to that. So I recall once this year, I had a group who were just about to go out on, they're all adults and and the youngest was 17, the oldest was 76, and all going out on a 3 day, 2 night, 3 day, 3 night quest. It's quite intense that, and they have some time to prep before and some reintegration time after. And the night before they go out, which they get up at dawn and go out through a gateway, I told the great quest story of the father of Indian corn
Mm.
and like about a young man's journey on a 7 day quest, but on his third day, three, in this country has a magic connotations, the magic of threes. And on his third day, he met a spirit guardian, and that spirit then had to work with his spirit guardian, this spirit helper, and to get the understanding of how to plant corn, how to grow it, how to tend it, and to give food to his people who were struggling. And he's known as the father of Indian corn. It's an Ojibwe, of Great Lakes peoples, in North America. But it's a fantastic quest story, and it really primed these people of like the need to endeavor on to quest, not to just fall asleep again,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
and how we all need to wake up in our daily lives. And that was a great way to bring a story in a yurt, sell
Mm.
it with just a candlelight.
Mm. Oh, lovely. And have you had some good feedback with the young people you're working with stories?
Yeah, some will actually start wanting. What's really nice is that they see storytelling as a tool, just like fire making or shelter building now. They're
Mm,
really understanding that we integrate storytelling as what I would call a core routine. And we have many core routines, one of them being simply the sit spot or the sacred spot or the secret spot, which is basically going to sit for 20
mm,
minutes or so quietly by yourself to just process your being. and
mm.
and and what we invite is coming back with well, what happened? Tell us the story of what happened, and they'll be like, well, I was really bored. I just sat there by the lake, but as I was watching, like I could see, like, I think they were like pond skaters, and they were all kind of dancing on the lake. And the lake was every time one moved, it created a concentric ring that affected the other. And then I thought about my life and how my footsteps in life, I'm affected by other people really badly, and I'm too affected. And I wondered how I affect others. And I'm like, we're starting like, wow, look at the story of that. The pond skaters gave you some medicine. So it's
Oh,
they come back, and they don't really know it's happening, but it's like the knowing is in the doing.
yeah.
Um,
That's
I
really,
love
really
that.
beautiful. Yeah, really,
Yeah.
really beautiful. So you tell a lot of quest stories, so mostly in nature-based stories, I imagine.
Um, all I like them all. Wonder Tales are really aligned to deep inner work, transformational work. So they're really good to bring that. I bring environmental stories into like conservation groups.
Mm,
I'm bringing sort of simple folk tales and funny tales, like the Clackety Boots or trickster stories. The kids love the funny tales. They love belly laughing around a fire at silliness. And
mm,
I think we all do, don't we? But so I try and bring some of those. So I'm not actually I don't particularly draw upon any particular method of story. And what I'm really building is that collection of stories within myself, so that when I'm with a group, I can just sit quietly and feel into what is the story that needs to be shared here.
yeah.
And I'm actually more confident in myself of doing that. Before, I'd be like, okay, I need to tell this story, and I had a
Mm,
fixed plan, and then the story wouldn't land at all well.
mm,
And so it's like, what's the fertile ground for the story that needs to be shared? What is
mm,
the audience who's there? Maybe it's a group of kids, maybe it's a family group in the family
mm,
community camp, maybe it's a school group. So I have to be sure on what's the story needs to be shared. And that means a lot of practice, which is probably my weaker point.
mm.
But I feel like I can wing it when I need to.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that's the thing, we've got what we did at the course was we've got the basic foundations now. So
Yeah,
winging it is easier now than it would
yeah,
have been before. I know
yeah,
I would have been put into a anxiety headspin if someone said, "Oh, tell this story." No, I need time. I need to practice. I need to make it perfect.
yeah.
All those things. So, can you tell the audience what it is that you do? What is the work that you do?
Well, currently I'm the director and the project manager of a community benefit society, Sacred Earth, which is been running for almost 15 years now. We steward and guardians for a 40-acre nature site. It's got beautiful ponds and lakes and streams and woods. The biological diversity is huge, so we have lots of unusual species like kingfisher and unusual emerald colored dragonflies and dung beetles, all these kind of like a lot of the environment and ecological issues of our time, climate change, we can share in good ways. But our key bespoke work is with teenagers, young adults, rites of passage, and yeah, beautiful work, community work that's sort of got lots of sort of concentric rings of effect. Um, and I love it. It's very good. It's a bit tiring sometimes, managing people. Um,
Yes.
that's the sort of drawback of this kind of work. We, behind the scenes, managing, administration. I call it comically death by administration.
I think administration is one of most people's creative people, particularly. It's one of the
Yeah.
worst possible jobs to do, but it is part of the
Yeah.
necessity of what
Yeah.
we do.
Yeah. I have a great PA,
Yeah.
Lucinda. She's really adept at this kind of administrative work and management work. So she's like my right hand. And Libby, an elder who's the anchor, she's my left hand.
Yeah.
So
You've got a
yeah,
good
big
team by the
team.
sounds of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the podcast is called The Heart of Storytelling. What
Hmm.
do you think is at the heart of storytelling?
Hmm. Well, I love the way that the word heart is very closely related to hearth and earth. And I would say, if we were to really journey into the roots of storytelling, the hearth is the place where storytelling began. People would come back from the hunt. Imagine our Paleolithic ancestors or beyond. They would gather around in a space, a fire, maybe a cave, a clearing in the woods. So it was related to the earth. We are neurologically and biologically designed for sensory connection. We're hardwired for connection, right, as human beings. So the heart, the half, the earth, they're at the root of our humanity. So I would say it's humanity ultimately is at the heart. And the human journey particularly of like our transformative development as humans, from our beginnings, our humble beginnings and roots of our beginnings to where we're heading towards in the stars and
Mm,
everything in between.
yeah, that's a lovely answer. I really like that. I remember
Thanks. Well, I
talking to you.
copyright that.
Well, I remember talking to you about reclaiming the Indigenous voices of Sussex and of England. Can you
Yeah.
talk a bit about that?
Yeah, well, you have to. Firstly, it's like what's been lost. A lot of people go, "Oh, we've lost our connection to our ancestry,"
Mm,
and I debate that. And so firstly, one of the things I would do as a tracker is to look at the history sort of records, the stories of the past. And so, like, who were the people who lived in these places before we were here? Whose shoulders are we standing on, to have got here? And so, finding in Sussex particularly, so Sussex is named after South Saxons, but they were migrants. They became here on invitation from a high king called Vortigern to help him push off the threat of the Picti people, the painted ones north of the Hadrian's Wall, or keep the Welsh at bay, who were actually, British, Romano-British people after the Romans had left. But pre-Roman, you have the Sussex people, so South Saxons, but the Anglo-Saxon peoples, which much of England has been named after.
mm,
But pre-Roman, we have 4 centuries of Roman colonization, right? So that's a traumatized people right there. So that's one of our big trauma epicenters of the British Isles. But go beyond that, you find the Atrebates, the Regini, the Canti, which Canterbury is named after. These are the south of the Thames River, the Thames being the Thamysis, the river of Isis. How did it get that name? That was Egyptian goddess. But these people, then you start to just even naming those people, the Demoni, the Siluris, the Catalaveni, the Trinovantes, the Iceni, everybody knows because of Boudica, or some people say Boadicea, but it's Boudica.
mm,
These are the people pre-Roman. and who met the Romans, were historically written down by people like Tacitus, the Roman historian. But beyond them, these people also moved into these islands. After the Ice Age, when the Roman the ice the bridge that collapsed in around about 12,000 years ago or so, after the end of the Ice Age, people were already here. And who are those people? We've got evidence of Neanderthals, Homo sapien, Paleolithic peoples, Cro-Magnon people 40,000 years ago. When places I live today were simply a great marshland that stretched from France to Britain, and the ice cap, that was north of London. Who are those people who hunted and gathered here? And so I love reaching out into those people's stories and finding evidence through archaeology and things like that. But if we were to look at how those people created themselves or look at them, then we have to listen to the rocks, the trees, the rivers. The land itself has a story, and the land itself still sings if you have a quiet mind to listen. And it takes a quiet mind, it takes sort of really learning how the birds are talking to us. And this is how our ancestors learned. This is how every indigenous culture has learned to become more. And they've learned to listen to to the unseen realms, the things that are talking beyond the physicality of life. And that's what I love to delve into. That's the mysteriousness of nature and the mysteriousness of other. And I think it's really relevant today because there's a lot of what I would call separation sickness today, disconnection, and othering of the other. If you're not in my camp, then you must be other. And we're seeing that all over the world today. And humanity, I would say, I don't know where I'm going with this one, but humanity is in crisis. Storytellers can be healers of communities, of the human soul, the human psyche. I think the storytelling, do you know how, like in the past, storytellers were welcome everywhere? There was in Britain, particularly in Europe, if you were a storyteller, you had a welcome pass you could be the enemy from an enemy sort of thing. But if you were a storyteller or a bard in these lands, you had a welcome pass to anywhere. And you shared the stories from around the land, what was moving. You shared songs. You shared the birth of this person and the death of that person. You carried messages and information to culture. So you were keeping pace, but you also found a place at the hearth, a bed. And you were always provided for as a storyteller because you carried what indigenous cultures would say was medicine. And that was a really important sort of place for cultures and tribal indigenous differences to find meeting grounds. In I think North America, they were called the twisted hairs. They had a certain twist on the hair, so they always were welcome everywhere they went. What a lovely way to be.
What a lovely way to be. Oh, that's awesome. So if you were to give people advice who are interested in working on the land and with groups of people on the land, what would your advice be if they're going to work with story in that space?
Yeah, I would find, that's a great question. So I would look at where you are. Where's your sense of place first in yourself? Your sense of belonging. Where's that first? And when you can, because we need roots, right? We really need to have our feet firmly in the ground for us to grow our branches to the sky. And I like to think of us as human beings as a bit like a tree. As we start to grow branches, we provide low-hanging fruits for others. But what do we need to do that? And we need anchoring. So if I would say, who are the people around you that can catch your story, that helps you grow as a person, and then seek out who's around you that's full of vitality, or somebody's really like an elder who's really got a quiet mind sort of place, really they're warm and nourishing to the soul that you can work with. Who's got like loads of energy and like vitality in their bodies that you can work with, because those kind of people, you need allies in this work. You need to, I like to think of stacking the deck in the cards that we're playing and helping, so if you were like, okay, I want to work with the land, well, who is the indigenous culture in your area? And they probably have some challenges. There's a lot of trauma in indigenous cultures, mainly through colonization. We all know that. We're all aware of that. But we all are being colonized in some capacity. And so, how do we reach out to people from these places who were there before us? And, particularly in places like Australia and Britain and America, where, we all know the story of today of cultural appropriation. So, how can we reach out to those people as well and say, hey, look, I want to learn. I'm human. I want to learn, and I want to hear your stories, and maybe we could share a space around a
Mm.
fire. Or do you have a certain way of storytelling that's appropriate that I can share to others so we can meet your culture in a good way?
Mm.
And that works for you and for us, for me. So I think, how did you, as for all storytellers and promising facilitators of storytelling spaces, you've got to be a bridge builder.
Mm.
So how do you weave connection? And so learning what connects us, what disconnects us,
Mm.
and do we know the difference? Because there's a real fine line to tread. So we've got to be artful in this way. And the art of storytelling is a cultural piece. It's a cultural element that
Mm.
we all are longing for. It
Mm.
builds community. So I'm open to individual mentoring, one-on-one personalized mentoring. Always a good way to sell ourselves in that way.
I really like that advice, Phil. I think um, going to seek wisdom is a really great way to think about that, looking in that space. So we're coming to the end now, and just wanted to know where people can find you in the work that you do if they're interested in finding out more.
Yeah, I think it's probably easier if people want to learn more about what I do, then to come directly to me. So that would be phgreenwood@outlook.com. My website with Sacred Earth as which would go through to the office, would be www.sacredearthland.co.uk. But I do some great one-on-one mentoring. We do group mentoring, and so that can be online or in person.
Mm.
Obviously in person in Britain, but yeah, that helps.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much for joining me today, Phil, and I really appreciate your wisdom.
Yeah, great to see you.
Well, that's our episode for today. I hope you've enjoyed learning about storytelling and folktale, fairytale, myth, legend, or personal tales, wonder tales, all sorts of stories, and the art of storytelling, and why we really need to continue using it today. You can find more information about me at alyssacurtain.com or at Alyssa Curtain Stories on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. I hope that you can find your heart in storytelling.